Hello, beautiful human. Welcome to the Create Your Empowered Story workshop. Today, we're going to talk about how you can stop making fear based choices and start living the life of your dreams. The time is now for us to stand in our power and to not just have stories that we tell ourselves, but to use the stories of our lives to empower us, to empower each other, so that we can make the world a beautiful place. If you haven't already, go ahead and grab a pen and a notebook. This is a working workshop, so I'm going to cover what I call story work, and then we're going to work through a modified practice, and so you're going to need a writing utensil to do that. Feel free to pause the video when we get there or now, so you can go ahead and grab your pen and your paper. Let's dive in. So first of all, who am I? My name is Erin Nicole Johnson. I am a writer, a poet, and what I like to call a self-love warrior. I've been on a self-love journey for over a decade. I have created several blogs that no longer exist on the public-facing internet. And I have pieces published on Medium, Substack, and my website. And then I'm also the founder of Your Origin Story, where it is my mission to empower women. Not just with your origin story, but in life. Looking at these two photos, we have the picture of me on the left, right after graduating college. I'm smiling. This is right outside of a local movie theater. My friend took this photo after we saw a film. I'm not actually happy. I had been going through the motions throughout college. I was depressed, had an eating disorder, and I self-harmed. And like I said, I've done a lot of self-love work. And so this photo on the right is me last year. I was volunteering at South by Southwest. And as a volunteer, you're able to go to the exhibits. And so one of the exhibits was having a free headshots. So I got my headshot done. So that's the photo there. I'm actually happy with my smile. Still experiencing hardship because we're humans and things are going to happen. But I know how to embrace my emotions and create my beautiful life. I started Your Origin Story because of that. I know what it's like to have disempowering stories playing on repeat. So I am a mindset empowerment coach, specifically a mindset empowerment coach for women. And so, like I said, on the second slide, actually, it is my mission to empower more women to step into their power. So with stories, as humans, we are storytelling creatures. We tell ourselves stories all of the time. They can be simple stories or they can be more complex stories. So if someone asks you about your day, maybe you don't know them too well and you don't want to expound, you might give them a simple story. You might say something like, "It was an okay day. I woke up with a headache, but I took some medicine, had a cup of coffee, went to work. Headache still wasn't going away, so I came home early, took a nap, and that kind of helped a bit, but I think I'm going to call it a night." Right? That's just a simple story. If maybe you're talking to a spouse or a best friend, you might elaborate a bit more and say, I woke up with this horrible headache. I took some medicine. I didn't think it was going to work because last time I had a headache like this, nothing worked. Made myself the coffee, started pouring it, spilled it all over the counter, and I was just like, this day can't get any worse. Cleaned up the coffee, sat down, savored the first cup because I just needed a moment. Started getting ready for work, drank my second cup, got in the car. Traffic today, for some reason, was horrible. I think there was an accident, right? So we can see the difference. We're giving more detail about our day and being more open and sharing our experience. And so when we're doing that to ourselves, we can sometimes tell ourselves the story that we're the victim. And some of these stories we're telling ourselves we're the victor. So when you think about your stories, the stories that you commonly play on repeat, which one are you, the victim or the victor in these stories? Are you the protagonist? So do you make yourself the main character? Or are you a side character in the stories that you're telling yourselves? And these side character stories are more often than not disempowering stories. But most importantly, you are the author of your stories. And I like to say if you're the author, you have control over which stories you can tell yourself. And so that's what the story work practice is all about. So this is a 3-act practice of transforming your disempowering stories into empowering stories. First, we have reconnect with your emotions, reconnect to your body. Then we're going to become aware of our thoughts or stories and beliefs. Then we're going to choose to create a new story. We're no longer going to listen to those default disempowering thoughts. Here at Your Origin Story, we are not bypassing our emotions. Emotions are highly needed for story work. This is why we cover it first in my programs. And then with our thoughts are tied to our emotions because we feel the emotion in our body. And then from that feeling, it goes up to our brain and we create a story. So that's why often fear and excitement can present the same way in our body, maybe a racing heart, sweaty palms. But the story we tell ourselves is either one of, oh my gosh, I'm going to go on stage and now I have stage fright, versus I love roller coasters, right? Whee, so much fun. So we have that mind-body connection. And then once we have those two down, reconnecting with our emotions and becoming aware of our thoughts, we are going to choose, and that word is very important, we are choosing to create a new story. Emotions are going to show us what we desire. When we become aware of our thoughts, we're going to go ahead and start slowly shifting them. And those two things help us create that story. And then through story work, you are going to become the victor and the protagonist of the stories you tell yourself. So diving into Act 1, this act is called Embrace Your Emotions. At the start of story work practice, we are going to take an assessment of how you feel about your feelings. A lot of us have been shamed for feeling certain emotions. For me, it was crying. I am a sensitive person. And so the purpose of Act 1 is not only to get you back in touch with your emotions, but also to shift your perspective, because emotions are compasses leading us to what we desire. So we need to feel our emotions so that we can understand what we are desiring from our lives. So the assessment asks questions like, do you feel your feelings? Why or why not? Again, some of us may be shamed, and so we don't want to feel those feelings. They're uncomfortable for us. Do you label your feelings or your emotions as good or bad? Often we have been raised to see anger or sadness, those are those bad emotions. And then happiness and joy, those are the good emotions. So are you still labeling emotions that way? And then, like I said, we're going to explain how emotions are the guide to what you desire. Once you've gained clarity on emotions, we're going to dive into our mind. So Act 2, we have silence the noise. And in this act, we are going to understand what we think and where these beliefs came from. Once you silence the noise, you can start listening to your voice because all that external noise will be so much quieter. And so our inner voice, that true voice, can actually start to be heard. And once we start hearing that true voice, we start to trust ourselves. So at the start of this act, we also take an assessment about our thoughts. So we ask questions like, do you believe everything you think? And then we're going to say something like, think of a limiting belief. So something like, I'm not good enough. And where did you learn that limiting belief? So Act 2 is all about noticing when those arise, and we're going to start shifting, like I said, to create our empowering stories. So Act 1 and Act 2 are the keys to loving and trusting yourself, because they're starting to uncover why your choices feel safe but are keeping you stuck where you don't want to be. And then our third act is when we are going to sit down, we're going to rewrite our stories. And these acts often, they come fast, so it's not just, we're going to spend time in our emotions and then we're going to spend time with the story and then we're going to write. Often it's bang, bang, bang. And once you get adept at doing the story work, you are going to be able to do it in the moment, and it's going to be a little bit quicker than what we're going to cover in a second. But we're going to rewrite our stories in Act 3 because words matter. At the beginning, again, I said I'm a writer. So of course words matter to me, but our words, what we tell ourselves is what we are going to see in our life. And when we start telling ourselves a new story, we can then start making aligned choices, which are going to lead us to what we desire. So we can start to see why story work is structured in this 3-act, because we're going to cover emotions. Emotions are going to tell us what we desire. Then we're going to think about our thoughts and what they're telling us. And then we're going to switch our thoughts and we're going to rewrite our stories and we're going to focus on what we want. And because we know what we want, because we did Act 1, we can start taking action to get to what we want. Boom, 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 right? At your origin story, I do not speak using the words positive and negative. So you might have noticed I've been saying the word disempowering and empowering instead. So with this question, is life happening to you or for you? We have the choice. Which one is empowering and which one is disempowering? So if you say life is happening to you, that is the disempowering outlook. And if you say that life is happening for you, that is the empowering outlook. So in Act 2 of Story Work, we cover victim consciousness stories, so stories that are disempowering. When you say that life is happening to you, that is a victim consciousness story because it is saying that you have no control over anything that happens in your life. But as we covered a few slides ago, what you say to yourself is what you're going to see. And then what you're going to see is how you take the action. So you actually have control over your life. So life is happening for you. And we are also making meaning from what happens. And so we can make a empowered meaning from what happened, a disempowered meaning, or we can also go, it's neutral. There's no meaning, but we are empowering ourselves to shift the narrative. All right, so this is the part where we're going to grab our pen and we're going to grab our notebook. And we're going to create an empowering story where a disempowering story currently lives for you. If you've read Anne Lamont's Bird by Bird or Brené Brown books, you're going to have heard the term the shitty first draft or the SFD. At your origin story, I have changed this to mean the sacred first draft. And it is sacred because when you examine it, it's going to show you what you really want in life. It includes both the default story, so the story I'm telling myself, plus the emotions that have arisen with the story. So the story is also an external stimulus that could happen to us. Let's say somebody cut you off in traffic and now you're agitated, right? Like I said, we're going to go over a modified version of what I call the story rewriting practice, or the SRP for short. The SRP is a simple but an effective way to start making aligned choices. So you are going to take the story you're telling yourselves, and then you're going to ask yourselves what emotions arise with the story. Then we're going to ask, what do those emotions reveal about what I desire? And we're going to use the language of I desire, blah, blah, blah. And then we're going to say, okay, now that I have what I desire, let me create the empowering story. So flipping the story from what you don't want to have to what you want to create. So this is a subtle shift, but it's going to be powerful because you're rewriting your story in a way that purposely empowers you. You might be saying to yourself at this point, I don't know what story I want to rewrite. So how do you choose a story? Here are some questions you can ask. What's a story that has been playing on repeat in your mind? Right? So what story do you want to rewrite? Where have you forgotten your power? So are you telling yourself a story where you are the victim instead of the victor? What stories are you telling yourself where you're still the victim? So that's a victim consciousness story. What event happened in your childhood where you felt small or your voice wasn't heard or you hid to feel safe? So that's a limiting belief. So again, we covered or we mentioned I'm not good enough. That could be I'm not smart enough. I'm not pretty enough. What's one of those limiting beliefs? And we can ask, what old identity are you holding on to that no longer serves? So that is an identity story. So maybe you're the eldest and there were certain things in your family that you had to do while you were a child, but now that you're adults and you live away from your siblings and your family, you're still in that older child energy. And there are certain things that you may not want to do, but you feel you have to do, but they're actually detrimental to who you want to become. And so we want to start getting rid of some of the disempowering older sibling stories that you're still holding on to. So to give you an example, we're going to take it step by step. We're going to start with the SFD. So my SFD from a journal a couple of years ago, I wrote, "The story I'm telling myself is that I should have worked more the first 2 weeks home. Then I would have rent money and have already paid my car note. I effed it up again." The story you're going to rewrite can be simple like this. It could be a little bit more elaborate. The point is we don't want to overthink. We just want to take a disempowering story and write down the first thing that comes to our mind. And the first thing that comes to our mind is probably the story you have been playing on repeat. So I'll give you a minute or two to think about it and to start writing that SFD. Okay. If you need more time, go ahead and pause the video. We're going to move on to the next part of the SFD, which is our emotions. So the emotions that arose with this story for me were fear, anger, and frustration. So fear, because I didn't have the money to pay rent or my car note. And so it's like, oh, how am I going to get the money to pay these on time? Anger at myself, because I should have, right, in the story, worked a bit more. And then frustration, because at the end, I thought I effed it up again. So I'll go ahead and give you another minute to write down which emotions arose for your story. We're going to go ahead and move on. Feel free to pause if you do need more time. The next thing we have is, what do the emotions reveal about what I desire? So for me, I said I desire to break the cycle of scarcity. I desire to do something greater with my life. So for my story, fear, anger, and frustration showed me I wanted to break the cycle of scarcity. This story is about not being able to pay bills. This had happened previously, and I was really frustrated with the cycle repeating itself again. It also revealed I wanted to do something greater with my life. This job sucked. I hated it so much, which is why I didn't work more the first 2 weeks home. And so these emotions arising from the story are showing me that this job isn't it. So I'll give you a couple minutes to write down for you what the emotions in your story revealed about what you desire. And make sure, again, that we're using the words I desire. We're going to move on. Feel free to pause if you need more time. So, the last thing we are going to do is rewrite our empowering stories. I wrote, I am grateful for the flexibility of this job, which has allowed me to spend a month at home. I have the power. I am not the victim of circumstance. I can choose another way. I can choose to listen to my intuition. I didn't fuck up. I made a choice that didn't give me the outcome of abundance. I thank the story for revealing power lies within me. So, with our empowering stories, we aren't changing the facts, but we are going to simply replace the story with a more empowered version. So, for me, I'm grateful for the flexibility of the job. First, I'm showing gratitude for having something that can give me the income to pay my bills. And then I start using words like, I have the power. I am not the victim. I can choose. I can choose to listen to my intuition. I didn't fuck up. I simply made a choice. And so that's what we're doing with the empowering stories. We're not taking the story and rewriting the facts. We're just looking at, okay, I desire to break the cycle of scarcity, do something greater with my life. What's the empowering story in all of this? The empowering story is I have the control. I can do the work. I can make the money. I have the power. And so we are still having the story, but we're flipping it. So we still have the story of me not being able to pay my rent or my car payment, but the next time something like this happens, I can think back to this story and go, oh, that's right. Last time I chose this. Now I can choose a different way because I have the power. So that's what we're doing when we create the empowering story. And I'll give you a couple minutes to write your empowering story. Feel free to pause if you need more time. But if you're done, how does the empowered version of your story make you feel? Hopefully, the word you're thinking to yourself is saying empowered. So going back to my story, again, we see how the modified story rewriting practice works. We take that disempowering story, really we can sum it up into the end part of my story of I effed it up again. And then we're going to take our emotions that arose with the story. We're pulling the emotions out of the story so that we can gain a little bit more clarity on what we're feeling. We're going to ask what the emotions reveal about what we desire. We're going to use the word I desire. And this word I desire is already shifting what we're seeing. And so instead of saying, oh, I effed it up again, this is what I didn't want to happen with the words I desire, now I'm focusing on what I actually want to see and experience in my life. And then we're going to take that and we're going to write an empowering story that is telling us that we are desiring to break the cycle of scarcity and to do something greater with our lives, to give ourselves the power. And then we're going to go out into the world knowing that we have the power. Because aren't you tired of the same disempowering stories playing on repeat? I know that I was, especially in my 20s, back in college, right? When I had the eating disorder, the depression, and self-harming, these disempowering stories were just constantly there. I was always never enough. Are you tired of feeling like you're never enough? And that includes never smart enough, never good enough, never pretty enough, right? All of these enough stories that we have, these limiting beliefs. Do you want to learn how to trust yourself? Do you want to finally believe you're worthy of your dreams and your desires? Because you are. You're here on earth, so you are already worthy of your dreams and your desires. If you answered yes, I am hosting a 3-day live challenge from April 22nd through the 24th called Turn Your Story into Power. So we went ahead and created an empowering story today. And now we're going to spend 3 days and we're going to take each part of the storywork acts and we're just going to do 1 hour each of Act 1, embracing your emotions, Act 2, silencing the noise so we can start trusting ourselves. And then Act 3, rewriting our stories and using our voices to step into our power. Who is this challenge for? This is a challenge for women who are ready to know that they're enough, not just think it, but embody it. Women who want to trust themselves and the path that they are creating. You want to courageously take aligned action toward your desires. You want to stop the self-sabotage and create your empowering stories. You're wanting to show up daily to put in the practice. Again, 3 days, 1 hour each. And you're ready to invest in yourself and your dreams. With this challenge, you are going to get a printable and downloadable challenge journal. You're also going to get a supported space with other like-minded women. You'll have the space to practice becoming who you're meant to be. We'll give you that hour a day. And you're going to also practice Storywork Live. And so it's basically what we did here in this short 30-minute workshop. But again, we're going to expand it to 3 days so we can have more of the information about what Storywork actually is. And if you can't make the live, we will have a replay available. So Turn Your Story into Power is a one-time investment of $39. It is time to take aligned action on your dreams. Stop repeating the same old bullshit stories and start creating your beautiful, abundant life. Join that challenge today. That's the QR code to sign up. Again, it is April 22nd through the 24th from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you have any questions on the challenge or anything that we have discussed here, feel free to reach out to me. I am at Instagram at your_origin_story. I'm on Blue Sky, although I'm not really posting there as often as I'd like, but you can find me at Your Origin Story there. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, Erin NJ Wordsmith, or feel free to send me an email at erin@erinnjwriter.com. And again, I hope that you will join me April 22nd through 24th so you can start taking that aligned action on your dream and writing your empowered story.